I'm standing here because, well, number one region, I'm absolutely passionate about this region. I've lived in the Oldbury in Sandwell for 30 years now. Before that, I grew up in Stourport, Worcestershire, sort of on the edge, but I've moved into this region. I love it. I believe that it's been left behind in a lot of ways, particularly in terms of, for example, transport spending. We get a tiny fraction compared to London. I'm here because I want to fight for this region and I want to promote it and basically do the best I possibly can for everyone that lives and works here. One of the reasons I'm different particularly is essentially UKIP isn't in favour of combined authorities. So you might say, why are you sitting here or standing here? Essentially, I believe excuse me, that the combined authority has the potential to really grow out of hand, to become a huge bureaucratic mess, bluntly. It's costing you and I a lot of money already, £14 million just to set it up. So one of the reasons I'm standing is to make sure that it stays lean and efficient, if you like, that it does the good things that it can do, which there are some good things and I recognise that, but essentially make sure that it doesn't become overly bureaucratic, that it doesn't just keep wanting to expand, keep spending more and more money, that it actually does a good job and basically works for both you and I. As you rightly say, we voted twice not to have a mayor. My opinion is, given I didn't want the combined authority or the mayor as a pair, my opinion is very much that the combined authority is extremely kind of self-contained, it's not very accountable. The people who are on it haven't been directly actually elected to be on that body. The mayor is actually the only person who's directly elected, and I think you need a mayor. Given that we've got the combined authority, it's been up and running since last summer, you need a mayor to actually, one of the things that I will make sure absolutely is it's open, it's accountable, people know exactly what's going on, what money's been spent, what it's doing, and I don't think that is actually taking place currently. So absolutely, I want to be the mayor that involves everybody, engages everybody, and makes sure they all know exactly what it's doing, why it's doing it, and that every penny it's spending is being spent well. My background is actually in IT. Excuse me, I worked in business for 30 years as basically involved in problem solving, in project planning for some pretty big companies, for BAS, Accenture, Saga. So my experience is in getting people together, sorting things out, making things work, solving problems, and I think that translates pretty well into the combined authority because as we know, there's a lot of problems across our region. So that's my background. I actually went into politics probably a couple or 3 years ago now, 3 years ago. And the reason I went into it is because I'm sick of politicians making, promises they can't possibly actually achieve. They know they can't achieve them. So all my promises, all my pledges, if you like, are actually, in my opinion, realistic, achievable. They're not pie in the sky. I believe they can be done, and I will make sure they're done. I believe that they largely work on a basis of common sense. Essentially, there's a large amount of people, I believe, particularly if you like what being termed working class, the working man, essentially who are not properly now represented by the Labour Party, particularly. I spend a lot of my time in underprivileged, if you might call it, areas, economically deprived. So I speak to those people. I know they feel left behind, not represented. It has nothing to do with race or background. I spend a lot of my time with the Sikh community, Ahmadiyya Muslim community. I spend time with black church groups. Essentially, people just feel they're not connected with politics or politicians. And I actually want to reconnect and basically make sure they're represented. And I felt UKIP does that. You can put it politely, I don't accept that it's racist. I know that certain individuals have been accused of being that, rightly probably, in the past. Usually, potentially like councillors or maybe even standing for councils. These people exist in all parties. If you look at our policies, I'll challenge you to find a UKIP policy that's actually racist in any way. If you've got one you think it is, please tell me. I don't believe they exist. All the people that I speak to in UKIP, that I spend my time with, I never hear them make racist comments or any kind of put forward policies of that basis. I don't accept that UKIP is in any shape or form racist. And one of the reasons I joined it was because basically I wanted to involve more people from different backgrounds, help them get to the top of the party and show that actually we are here to represent everybody. course, different parties, but I just think the policies that adopt, I basically believe in, excuse me, I believe that we still can be a nation. I don't accept open borders. I think there's a reason to actually say, you know, we can control our own borders, make our own laws. I don't accept, you know, some of the ideas, if you like, of the other parties. I don't see anything wrong with being a nation. So that's part of the reason why I joined UKIP. Yeah, no, I would like, particularly if you like, in terms of I stood for Police and Crime Commissioner, and I stood on the basis that I think it's really, really bad that we have so little representation in the police force from different ethnic communities, and absolutely would like to see that increased. Nothing would make me happier than to see that also represented in the mayoral campaign. I slightly disagree in the sense that I think that white people, if you like, should be able to represent anyone in the same way as if you're black or Asian, you should be able to represent all parts of the community. So I don't accept necessarily that you can't represent everyone, and you should be able to do that. But yeah, ideally, of course, I would like to see a mix of ethnicity and ages and backgrounds represented absolutely in the candidates and on offer in that sense, yeah. Has something gone wrong? That's a difficult question. Actually, one of the candidates, when we had our internal hustings, was an Asian guy, and you know, there were only, I'll be honest with you, there were only a few people in the actually contending for the UKIP candidacy, because I have to put up well, £5,000 of my own money, which is at risk for the deposit. So, you know, I'm fortunate that I was, through various reasons, I'm not rich by any means or wealthy, but I was fortunate I was in a position to do that. Is it a problem? Yeah, it is a problem, but I think it's a two-sided thing, because ultimately, you know, people in the ethnic communities really need to get out there, get involved. I would encourage them to do that massively, and you know, you need to provide the opportunities to do that, but also people need to actually take them up. So we do need to do a lot of work in that respect. I 100% agree. Absolutely, housing is a massive issue, and it's a big part of the mayoral remit, if you like. I think we have an acute housing crisis, and unfortunately it is probably going to get worse. We need to take some pretty drastic actions. One of the things that I would like to do, that I've been focusing on, is actually converting change of use of some office blocks which have been to let for a very long time. So I'm looking at those and actually change them into affordable housing, flats or whatever. Particularly inside town centres. I know, for example, in West Bromwich, I know there's some blocks there that have been to let for a long time. So I think it would be have a dual benefit, because if we get people back into the town centres, that provides, if you like, a resource for the local traders to actually, you know, sell to. So I'm very much looking at that. I'm also, I mean, every candidate will tell you the same thing. We need to 100% concentrate on brownfield first, which is partly about money. Some of the brownfield sites are expensive to prepare and redevelop. And looking at empty houses, the candidates will all tell you the same things, I'll be honest, converting empty houses. I really am passionate about trying to protect the green belt, so I will absolutely do that, and that will be an absolute last resource. So there's a number of things we can do, but I think, you know, ultimately it is going to be a difficult problem, because we are an expanding region and there are limited opportunities, certainly in certain parts of the region, for actually expanding the resources of housing. Yep, congestion, as we all know, in terms of road particularly, but also, you know, the trains are absolutely packed at rush hour times. There's a number of things that we can look at to do that. In terms of rail, there are one or two railway lines which are disused or mothballed, or perhaps freight only currently. So I'm looking, there's one particular one, Camp Hill line, which goes from Kings Norton to Moseley into the New Street. So there's things we can look at there in terms of reopening lines, which have been talked about for a long time but never actually happen. There's also a Worcester to Derby line, which goes up through the Black Country. In terms of roads, basically very difficult to build more roads in and out of a city centre, as we all know. We need to look at other forms of transport. I absolutely support the cycling initiatives that are going on, you know, for health reasons, for congestion. Makes a lot of sense, particularly in terms of using waterways. We've got canals and rivers which we could use, add them into the cycling network. So that's absolutely something which I would like to promote. But essentially, the other part of the equation, I think, is to try and revitalise the town centres, and if you like, take a little bit of the focus away from the city all the time, because There are limited routes in and out, and there are always going to be. So if we're always looking to expand the city centres rapidly, then I think we're always going to have a problem. So let's try and distribute things a little bit better. My vision of a post-Brexit country, but particularly the West Midlands, because we are a big manufacturing base, you know, roughly twice as much manufacturing here as some other regions. Absolutely is to, I know it's a bit of a hackneyed cliche, but to trade with the world. And I speak to businesses, chambers of commerce, and they are obviously a little bit concerned about the uncertainty. 100% accept there is some uncertainty there, and maybe slightly things might get a little bit worse before they get better. But I absolutely passionately believe that it is the best thing for the country in the medium long term. I believe there's a lot of opportunities, particularly to trade with the Commonwealth out there, which partially we've been discouraged from doing so by the European Union, or they're a little bit jealous of our ties and our relationships, which we can invigorate and, you know, restore. So yeah, I absolutely believe it's the right thing for the country, but particularly the West Midlands, because of our opportunities to export. And we hear a lot about the pound going down in value and how bad it is, but the converse side of that is it makes our exports a lot cheaper, so it actually provides even better opportunities in that sense. I know there was a spike. I mean, people argue the figures. I think 41% is mentioned at some point, which is a big increase, obviously. And I don't want to see any rise. Well, I want to see hate crime eliminated, obviously, because for whatever reasons, you know, ultimately I am a great believer we all need to get on. There is never any excuse to take against somebody on the basis of their colour or creed or even politics. You know, that's one thing I find really distasteful, is when people actually use politics as a reason to hate, or we don't need any of that kind of thing. It's about engagement, I think, and people understanding each other. And one of the things that is, you know, a problem for UKIP is I do think we are, sometimes because the media actually being backed by Labour or Conservative wants to portray UKIP in that light, we are very much, you know, suffer in the sense that people don't really understand. We absolutely are not against people on the basis of what country they come from, what colour they are, etc. We want everyone to live and work together. It's just that we see, you know, the UK as a nation as being an entity. We don't actually necessarily want to be part of a federal Europe. That doesn't make us racist. In fact, I would say, because we want to have a fair immigration system from all countries, not just the case that if you come from an EU country, you can walk in with no job, no money, that's great. If you come from part of the Commonwealth, you have to have a job worth £18,500. You can prove that you can support yourself. A whole new set of conditions, and we believe it should just be the same for everyone. So absolutely, that's what I believe in, and that's what I would like to see. Is Islamophobia a growing problem? I think Islamophobia is a big danger. I think it's very hard to judge whether it's actually a growing problem or staying around the same, but ultimately my opinion is that it's very much about, as I said before, engagement, communities engaging with each other. Fear tends to develop from segregation, and what I would passionately like to do is actually get the different communities more involved with each other, working with each other, make sure that we don't have segregation of communities. I think that will effectively really reduce it. People are afraid of things they don't understand or they don't know. So if we can actually challenge that, then absolutely that's what I would like to do. Just very briefly on EDL and BNP, etc. UKIP are absolutely passionately against those. If you look at who can join different parties, UKIP's actually the only party you can't join if you've ever been associated with the BNP, EDL, Britain First. You cannot join UKIP. You can join other parties, but you can't join UKIP. We are very much, you know, making sure that we do not have any association with those parties. I do support the prevent strategy. I think overall, as I've kind of said before, the main thing is just engagement, getting people involved with each other and breaking down that fear and segregation. But when you don't understand something, you fear it. So I would like everyone, all the different groups to mix. I go along to Ahmadiyya Muslim groups because they are very involved in actually getting, you know, they have conferences where they have multi-faith people there. You get people from all faiths actually speaking together. They've got slightly different views, obviously, but they all accept each other's views. And I think it's all about mixing and getting together, basically. Absolutely. We have some parts of the West Midlands are doing really well. You know, if you look over at Coventry and Solihull, around that kind of area, they're actually short of office space, they're short of housing. You know, some quite wealthy areas around there. Other parts, particularly where I come from actually, are very deprived and economically challenged, if you like. I think one of the things that we can do is we have actually got a lot of innovation going on. We've got some real great centres for innovation, Birmingham City Science Park, all sorts of people working with universities. There's a lot of good ideas out there, a lot of innovation, which isn't always translated into actual businesses and developing those businesses. I think one of the things that the Combined Authority and the Mayor can do is actually bridge that gap a little bit, if you like, in terms of actually developing them into thriving businesses, and then those will actually reach out. You know, we can spread that wealth and prosperity, if you like, as we're developing it across the whole region, rather than currently, you know, waiting for it to trickle down is kind of the approach, and it's just not happening, you know. So we've got these hot spots of quite wealthy, thriving areas, and we've got other ones where they're very much the opposite, and I really want to see that change and actually start spreading the prosperity a bit. One of the problems we have at the moment is, bluntly, the country is in severe financial straits. I'm not sure as people actually realise quite how severe they are, whether it's a hangover from 2008, whatever. We are where we are. We have a 2 trillion deficit. We have this best part of 2 trillion pension fund deficit. We have basically debts everywhere you look. Hospitals are running on PFIs, which they have to pay 10% of their budget out every year. But we are in severe financial straits. I think the government at the moment is being disingenuous, or basically deceptive really, in terms of they are cutting back local authority money year after year severely, and then they're handing out in the budget little bits of money here and there. Oh, here's 25 million to improve roads across the Black Country. What's that going to do?